Hello, my name's Ajay Ryan. You're watching The Defining Moment for Creating the Culture of Conscience. Today we're happy to be joined by Marshall DeSouza. Marshall was born in Kenya and came to the UK back in 1969. In 1989 he graduated from the Unification Theological Seminary. And from 1990 onwards he's been the UK coordinator for the Religious Youth Service. Currently he's a qualified youth and community leader. Marshall, thank you for joining us on The Defining Moment.
Hi there.
Well, today's topic is about the state of British youth. Can you please share with us a defining moment from your life?
I think one of the most important and moving moments of my life was back in 1990. Funny enough, as you mentioned, when I first joined the Religious Youth Service. I was actually in San Francisco at the time, just prior to this moment. I got a phone call and I was asked to go to Poland to join the Religious Youth Service project that was happening in the summer. And I wasn't told initially that my first task was to take a minibus. They were lacking a minibus. So I had to drive single-handed a minibus from London to Warsaw. And that was an experience and a half, because once you've crossed, when you come out of Eastern Europe, you hit the Eastern European countries, and the whole language thing is a whole big issue and quite challenging. But I got into Poland not knowing where I was going and so on. It was really a moment of faith, but also a very moving experience for me. I found out, I discovered the place I was meant to go to, and I stayed in this project. And I think from the 4 or 5 weeks I was in Poland, I felt, this is what I really should be doing in my life. I should be working with youth. I felt so youthful, I felt so energetic and so excited. And I've not turned back since, basically. So, I always remember that summer of 1990.
And what was it about that experience in Poland? Obviously it was with the Religious Youth Service, but what was it about the spirit of that event that really captured your heart?
Well, it showed me, I think for the first time in my life, I realized that when a number of young people get together and unite and do something for like a higher purpose, the outcome is incredible. There were 3 different work sites during that project. I was involved in one just outside Warsaw. We were actually installing a water supply to a village. And, it was funny in one way because my height was the yardstick. So I was the most popular person on the site, because as all these youth were digging the trench for the water, for the pipes to go through, they wanted to make sure they were digging deep enough. So my name was called from one end of the village to the other, and that itself wasn't the most important thing in life, but it was nice to be wanted, and I was really I think popular. But I realized, at the end of the day, when we finished building this water supply, it was a lot of hard work, all the digging, but in the end we did it in an incredibly quick time. We put a water supply. We met the mayor of the village, of the town nearby, and it was just incredible. Something that was something really worthwhile was accomplished in a short space of time. And I've gone on since to take part in projects almost every year, in different parts of the world. And I think it just gives me so much energy, and it keeps me going.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that with us, Marshall.
You're welcome.
Well, nowadays your work with young people is not only exclusively with the religious youth, but with the everyday suburban youth, kids on the streets, as well as, the so-called problem makers.
Right.
So in line with that, I know there have been some very damaging reports of late, but we'll touch on those later. But for now, can you tell us from your experiences, what are the challenges facing youth workers in Britain today?
I think that one of the biggest challenges is the behaviour of young people. The young people seem to be in a world of their own. They seem to do what they want. More and more, I think, these days, the challenge for many youth workers is to understand young people and to win their hearts, and be able to work with them in such a way that they don't feel apart from them, but empathize with their needs and desires, and somehow work with them to accomplish goals and things with them. I think this is really a challenge, because the whole idea of the needs of young people has changed a lot over the years, and these days what young people want is quite different, say, from 15 or 20 years ago. So it is a challenge for youth workers to be able to understand that, and to find, I think, a compromise between giving them what they want, but also helping them and advising them to go along a path that would be beneficial to them and to society as a whole.
And why do you think behaviour is just so bad?
Well, I have my own opinion about that. I mean, I think it comes really down to the family. I honestly think our whole family structure has broken down, in the last 10, 15 years or more. And I think this is the root cause of a lot of problems. And, I'm not blaming anybody for that. It's just how things have developed. And it just seems that young people are making a mark, maybe given the fact that the parents are very busy trying to survive. In many cases, there's a breakdown in the family. Couples have split up and so on. So we find ourselves in a situation where young people are not in a healthy situation at home, particularly. And I honestly believe if we have a stable home situation, then that leads to a stable family, society, and nation. So I think if you have a lot of problems at home, then that's going to overspill into society.
So in some sense, as a youth worker, it's already too late. The damage has been done.
Success with youth workers is not just working with the youth, but if possible, working with the parents as well. If we can work in cooperation with parents, if parents can work with us and help us to reach out to children, then I think there's hope.
And are you finding that's actually happening? Are parents getting on board?
Well, I've spent quite a bit of time working in the youth service, and I found that unfortunately only a small number of parents have worked with me, and it's those parents, I believe, when there's parental input, their children have really benefited. But where parents don't seem to care what their children are doing, then I think this makes the children even more independent, and they go astray.
Well, I know myself as a parent of very young children. The demands of trying to keep up with all their schoolwork
Sure.
and the after-school activities, that's actually quite a big responsibility. And so, on the one hand, I can understand if parents find it difficult to support youth clubs and centres like yours. However, at the same time, it's obviously very important. So my question is, do you think the situation as it is, even with local government or even national government, really is helping that partnership of parents and youth workers to really take care of our young people?
I don't think so. I think a lot of money has been spent over the years on trying to get young people to do certain things, and I recall my own local youth service providing lots of money to send troublesome children, youth to different places, so that they could have a good time there. But I often felt honestly that the reason for that was to bring the statistics down, and to show the police and to show society that crime can come down. But actually all it does is just delays the problem, because I think what's really missing is this education that young people need, supported by parents, to show them actually there are many things young people can do in life in preparation for their future. And generally speaking, in society, we don't teach our young people social skills. We teach them, there's education, there's all these subjects we learn, and many of them don't get jobs. However, we don't teach our young people social skills, how to relate to others, relate to parents, to other young people. I think that's missing. That needs to really come into the equation.
And what about national government? Do you think our current leadership is really getting on board and supporting the work of youth workers? I mean, there has been this recent ASBO, the Anti-Social Behaviour Order. Is that really working?
Well, I appreciate any effort that's made to help young people get back on track or to stop them committing crime and misbehaving. I appreciate that. However, I think not always is the right methodology used. So, in my own opinion, I think pouring money and having the ASBOs in place, I think my experience is it has helped some people, but I think by and large it's not really been a success, because I think the whole situation with young people hasn't really improved despite the effort of the government. So I think we have to look at another approach. And my own feeling is that we need to look at ways in which maybe we can maybe a little bit go back in time a little bit and look at family values and look at how we can support families. I think there is some talk about that. to look at, helping families to try and, focus on family issues, like helping young people to have a better family life and working with parents in that area, so that the result would be happier families. I think if you have a happy home, then you're more likely to have young people behaving outside the home. So I think there needs to be a bit of energy put in this area.
And in London, of course, things are very mixed. I mean, you have communities which feel quite safe, and there are others which you feel completely the opposite. And I imagine if you go, certainly my experience is being in Manchester and Liverpool, and even, of course, in Scotland, in parts of Scotland, the situation seems even worse. Do you think that there's really a possibility that we can really salvage now this breakdown of family, this breakdown of our young people into parents who actually are just children having children?
Yes.
Do you think it's really possible to kind of resolve or restore this situation?
Well, I've been thinking a lot about this, and I'm very concerned. I have a 13-year-old son, and I'm concerned about the future for him and for all other children. I think we need to have more projects that can really provide activities and also meaning for young people. For example, you mentioned Scotland. One thing that came out of this report, it said that teenagers have the worst relationship with parents in Scotland. They talked about only like 40% of the children in Scotland actually eat meals with their parents. And that's scary. And because if the 60% of the time they're away from the family, what are they doing?
Marshall, besides all these obstacles and challenges to being a youth worker, what's been your most rewarding experience?
I've had many rewarding experiences working with young people. I'm going to give you my most recent one, because on Saturday I just returned from Ireland with a group of 14 youth and one parent. 16 of us went over to Dublin at the invitation of some good people over there to take some of my youth to work with youth in Dublin. And we visited 4 different youth clubs and then ended up with a wonderful youth workshop on Saturday until we had to depart and come back. We went there to talk about HIV and AIDS, and we looked at helping young people develop their talents.
This was a particular group that you're working with?
Yes, the name of the group is WAIT. It originally stands for Washington AIDS International Teens, but I like to think that young people should really wait rather than get involved in relationships and so on until they're mature. And it's important actually for youth workers to not just say to young people, wait, but actually to give them things while they're waiting. And WAIT, the WAIT UK project does exactly this. We help the young people develop their talents. We look at them and discuss with them what's the best thing that they're interested in and how we can help them. So, for example, a lot of young people are interested in music, some in drama, others in singing. So we basically help young people to develop their talents in these areas, and in public speaking, for example, as well. And we do this in such a way that they're not only developing their own talents, but actually they're doing something good. They're also serving the community. They're helping other young people get on board and get away from the other distractions of life. So we went to Dublin, and we were able to go to 4 different youth clubs, and we performed. We have a certain repertoire that we perform for about 40 minutes. Then we interact with the audience, and at the end of each performance, the youth workers in charge came up to me and said, I don't know how you did this, but our youth were alert and they were interested in the duration of your performance. Normally these kids don't even sit on a chair for 5 seconds. So that gives me hope. I think projects like WAIT, and there could be many other projects, can really help young people, because we need to fill in the gaps. We need to get them off the streets. We need to get them off drugs and all other things that we read about, right? We need to get them off that by giving them something that they're interested in and helping them develop that interest, where they can actually build a career, where they can really serve society and build good families in the future.
And there's a power in young people being the ambassadors of that themselves.
Absolutely. Now, I took 2 older youth with me who were actually the main educators. It wasn't me and the other parent. We were there to oversee things. But actually, my youth leaders, I like to call them, they're the ones who, and the younger ones, really shared this message. I call it peer motivation. They were motivated, and they multiplied this motivation with other youth. And I think if many projects can be developed in this way, I think we can change the thinking of our youth and really help them to change their lives in a better way.
And again, I mean, you face an awesome challenge. I mean, you mentioned free sex, drugs, all kinds of other challenges that young people face, even in those industries themselves, the music industry or be it the film industry. Now, when you consider all of that, and of course WAIT is one project, but again, it's an awesome task to imagine how you're going to create an organization, let's say even on a city level, that can compete with what the media or the decadent media are throwing at you or throwing at young people.
That is a very good point, Ajay, because I think the media has a lot to answer for. And one of the things we tell our young people is that, we're giving them a choice, and they have a choice. They don't have to follow everything that's thrown at them. So, for example, one of the things we do apart from the performances is we have a discussion on what's thrown at them. For example, let me give an example. For example, safe sex. Now, the definition of safe sex is that the sex should be safe. The definition of safe is not to be harmed, right? But actually, what we find that the use of condoms, which is the primary thing of safe sex, is that it is not 100% safe. For example, 25%, and statistics have shown that 25% of cases allows STDs to be transmitted.
Sexually transmitted diseases.
Yes, exactly. So actually, that's not very safe. Safe would be 100%. But it's not. And there are many other things that the media throw at people, like this whole idea of peer pressure and so on. If young people realize that they don't have to go by that, if they're committed in some area which they enjoy doing, just develop that, So I think one of the roles of youth workers is to help young people understand that they have a choice, and they should exercise that right to a choice. And if one choice is to abstain until they're mature to have relationships, then why not? If that will prevent them from catching sexually transmitted diseases, it'll prevent them from having broken relationships which they can't handle. There are all these things that young people don't need to get into at all. And what's wrong with building strong families? So I think the role of youth workers is not simply to go by the status quo, but to look at even to go against the flow, as it were, to look at projects and ideas that can help young people, think of the future. Let's look more at the outcomes, the long-term outcomes, rather than just short-term happiness that everybody seems to go for. We may be going against the grain, but in the long term, we'll save the government lots of money if millions of girls are not pregnant, in a few years' time and so on. So I think there's a lot that can be done.
And do you find that in the network of youth workers that you're with, they share these kind of values or have this kind of moral stance on issues like teenage pregnancy?
This is something I've been struggling with, to be honest, because I think not all youth workers share this. We're in an age where we talk about equal opportunities and political correctness and so on. So this is a problem, and I personally have faced this. And to tell you the truth, I don't want to put anybody down, but in my own work in the youth area, I've had problems working with youth workers, never mind with the young people. So we're in a society where people's views and opinions are so varied. And it's a shame in one way. Of course, freedom and creativity is a good thing, but I think if you're far from, if workers' ideas are so different, then it's very hard to have outcomes. So I think that's, maybe over time we have to look into that.
What would you think if, as a nation, we brought back conscription and young people had to go to the army and get disciplined?
That's, I think there is something to say for that, because if young people went to the army, say, for 1 year or 2 years, I think it will give them a good standing in life. I think there's a lack, there's a need for that, because there is a lack of discipline amongst young people. It's either because parents don't have the time, or they're just not strict enough, or if they are strict, they get into trouble, because that's the way our society is. And young people seem to have too many rights. They seem to be very strong in their opinions and so on. So I think, yes, conscription could be a good idea if it's done properly. It could be a good idea, because I think the young people will come back with a disciplined mind, and I think that would be a good foundation on which to build on. I think I would go for that, yes.
Okay. Now let's finally touch upon this damaging report recently from UNICEF. They surveyed youth across Europe, and in that survey, well, you can tell us the rest of the story.
Well, yes, apparently UNICEF looked at the 21 richest countries in Europe, in the world, in fact, in the world. And Britain, the United Kingdom, came actually last, 21 out of 21. The United States was only at just one place above us.
Out of curiosity, who actually came top?
Holland. Okay. Holland came. I read the report. I have it in my office. Basically, they were looking at the way youth are managed and the way they behave and their relation. They looked at a number of things: relationships. They looked at how they address the problem with drugs, alcohol, teenage pregnancy, and so on. Education. It seems that countries like Holland have a very good system. Holland and even the Scandinavian countries like Denmark and Sweden, they seem to take care of youth. Funny enough, at a bank recently, I was having a discussion about this while waiting to be served, and I met a lady from Sweden, and she was telling me, because some other topic came up, and she was telling me that in Sweden, and I think in Denmark as well, they have a very good social welfare system. There's a system where social workers actually work with young people all the time. So even though there could be legalization of drugs and things in Denmark and so on, but equally the young people are educated as to the dangers of drugs. And to some degree we do that in England, but still I think we don't follow it through. We don't really take care of young people. So I think what this UNICEF report was basically saying, that our youth have got out of hand. Right? They seem to be doing their own thing, and to some degree the government has supported that. For example, the issue of teenage pregnancy. If young girls didn't get the support they're getting, like in housing and benefits and so on, there would be lesser chance of them proceeding in that way. Because the government seems to be supporting it, then more and more girls feel they can leave a difficult situation at home and go out somewhere and get all the support they need, and that just enhances the problem. So I think the problems of the way we educate young people, the way we help them to educate them regarding drugs and preparation for marriage and things like that, that really needs to be addressed. We don't seem to be very good in that. So I think we need somehow to sit back and look at these things. We need to get the right people who are already thinking about these, including young people, get them together and set up projects, set up courses, whatever it's needed. Because I think it's not too late. It's time we did something, because Britain has a wonderful tradition. It has a Christian tradition, and I think we seem to have lost that. I personally feel ashamed to talk about our teenagers, and I'm wondering, that even with a so-called developed youth service, we've not been able to raise up our children well. So I think that's something we need to really, reflect upon.
And finally, Marshall, with reports like this from UNICEF, it's nothing new. In fact, we've been hearing these stories, especially about the UK and the fact that we have the worst teenage pregnancy record, right, at least in Europe. That's been going on for many years. In fact, it's probably at least a decade or so since we've had those headlines. Nothing seems to change. And even now, being at the bottom of the barrel, like being in the worst place that we could possibly find ourselves, we have to pick ourselves up and move forward. But these reports in themselves are not going to be enough, are they?
Well, one good thing is we can't go further down, so that there's only one way, and that's up. So I think that's why I think that's really important we look at new ways. We need to either learn from other countries, or we need to listen to people who are doing good things. So if there are projects out there that are really helping young people, even if they're few and far between, we need to bring them on board. Let's learn from them. Let's make this a policy. I think also the people in charge need to think about this, not just throw money out, but to look at the consequences. I really feel this has been lacking. The consequences of, say, legalizing drugs, the consequences of the use of condoms and things like that. We really need to look at that, not just for the economic benefit, which everybody seems to be thinking about, particularly the government. So I think we have to look at long term. Funny enough, I was just talking the other day to somebody, and I was saying, if the government stepped in today and encouraged more conservative kind of attitude towards young people and help them with more education, about even towards abstinence until they're old enough, to have sex and so on. I think that would save the government lots of money, because there'd be less crime, there'd be less girls pregnant. So actually, it will help the government in the long term. So I think the government and concerned people, including parents, need to step back and let's look at a new approach.
Well, Marshall, it certainly seems like there is a long way to go. I wish you all the best in reaching out to the now generation and hopefully getting them to think about not only their future, but their posterity's future. Thank you for joining us today.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Well, you've been watching The Defining Moment for Creating the Culture of Conscience. If you'd like to find out more, we're on the web at www.definingmoment.eu. Thank you for watching, and we wish you all the best.